That's cool.
I've got some here.
Right. Into my guru and protector, my intuition, with qualities and types of spiritual grace and glory, whose understanding shines forth for the sun, unclouded by the firmaments of truth. Who teaches in 60 ways with precious love and Father, please understand. All creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confusing the darkness of their ignorance. Uses trying the creation of the Lama, rises under stupid visions and prisons and iron chains of power. Most powerful soul of wisdom used as suffering as well as responsibility, clearing the problems. I am spiritual and spiritual, principle on the perfection of Buddhism. Wisdom pure from being all the grace of those knowing and my intelligence and wisdom, so that we gain insight into Buddha's word and the text that explain them. I go for refuge into enlightenment to the word, the Dharma, and the highest assembly from the inclinations that I collect by listening to the teachings. Now I attain the state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge into enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, now I attain the state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge into enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, now I attain the state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings.
All right, here we go again. Hey,
Yes.
so did you have a good break?
Yeah.
All right.
What break?
Yeah, what break? Well, I hope that the people at home had a bit of a break. Actually, I didn't have a break. I slept for, I think for the first 3 or 4 days, I was just sleeping. Anyway, so it seems that we had like a week or 10 days break, but it seems like a very long break in the sense that it's really hard to get the mind back into the text. That's where we were before we took our week or 10-day break. So let's first of all look at what we've covered up until now. Thank you. So we've been looking at chapter number 6, as we all know, the chapter on patience. In looking at how we arrest fury or anger towards stuff which brings unwanted things, remember that we, I think that it was verse number 7 that said, having found its fuel in mental unhappiness, in the getting what I want and in the abstraction of what I want and in giving me what I don't want, something like that. So this is the way that anger arises, right? When you get what you do not want, when you don't get what you want. Then there's 3 objects that give rise to anger. Myself, the one that are close to me, and those that I dislike. All right, so when I or my friends don't get what we want or get what we do not want, we become angry. When our enemies receive what they want, the people that we dislike, they receive what they want, we get unhappy, get annoyed, or when they have obstructions to what they do want, we become happy. Exactly. So then, what we want is you might remember, we want happiness, we want to have good reputation, we want other people to say good things about us, that the 4 objects that we've discussed before. So arresting fury towards stuff which brings unwanted things. First of all, we've covered the arresting fury towards those who wrong you, which means those who give us not only physical suffering, but also those that criticize us, say unpleasant things about us, they damage our reputation, fame, they prevent our praise and so forth. So we've covered the verses that explain how to cultivate patience in those cases. Then we started to cover the section of arresting fury towards those who wrong those due to oneself. And we said that it's not only people that are due to oneself, it's also your set of beliefs, the things that you like in general, not only people, but other things. Like, for example, in arresting it by means of the patience that is intent on the Dhamma, we spoke of why it is unreasonable to get angry when the things that you have, that you trust or that you believe in are being damaged. Like, for example, if someone damages Buddha statues, stupas, and so forth, it is not reasonable to become angry because the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha are not really harmed when that happens. Likewise, it is reasonable to be patient with those who cause harm to those to oneself. I think that we said that when we consider harm that arises with respect to yourself, we regard it as something that arises because of karma. Because of someone else is being controlled by karma and afflictions is harming us. And the same thing happens when those who are close to our heart, are being harmed. Right? They're being harmed due to other causes and conditions, because of karma, because of the control of the afflictions and so forth. So rather than becoming angry, a better response is patience. And we also spoke of compassion before in one of the previous verses. So this is arresting it by means of patience that is intent on the Dhamma. We also spoke of arresting it by means of the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. It is as unreasonable to be furious only with animate things. So we spoke about how we are being harmed by both animate and inanimate things, and we only get angry with people that harm us, but not with inanimate things. But since both of them are equally, animate and inanimate things are equally sources of harm, it is unreasonable to get angry with one and not the other. We spoke of the reasons why fear is unreasonable. I can't remember exactly what the verse says. Let's just briefly look at it. So it says in verse 67, should one person do harm out of confusion and another is confused and gets angry, then who would be without fault and who would be at fault? Do you remember that verse? All right, so if someone is harming us because of their confusion, because of ignorance or anger, and we get angry at them because of, you could say, our confusion or because of the harm that they inflict upon us, and both of us are at fault, there's no one that is without fault. Then we've covered reflecting on one's own faults in verses 68 and 69. Why did I previously commit those actions because of which others now cause harm? If all are related to my actions, why should I begrudge them? Having sinned thus, no matter what, I should strive in this way of what is meritorious, that all will have loving thoughts towards each other. I think that one of the points that we have discussed in the previous session before we took a break is that all these verses that we cover now come under the section of arresting fear towards those who wrong those do to oneself. And although verses 68 and 69 speak about why am I getting angry with those that harm me because of my karma and so forth, because of me creating the causes and conditions for them harming me, in the same way you can set up when the ones that are due to yourself are being harmed, you can also think about them as having created causes and conditions before for experiencing that harm, and using that as a reason for arresting fear. And again, as we said before, it's not a matter of just becoming idle and not responding to harm that is inflicted upon either oneself or another. We can be more reasonable and more efficient and skillful in dealing with harm if we take anger out of the equation. Right? Without anger, if we deal with that with wisdom and compassion, a way of responding to a situation with wisdom would be much better than with anger. So this is what we've covered in the previous session of the previous week. Today we picked up from the section on reflecting on the benefits of this specific kind of patience, which is arresting it by means of the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So we've already looked at before at the verse that explains the benefit of meditating on suffering. Do you remember that? We've already spoken before of the benefits of suffering or meditating on suffering. So I think that it was verse 21 that says also suffering has its qualities. Through suffering, you have a greater determination to emerge from cyclic existence. You shun negativities. You develop joy in virtue. Lamatsun Kappa adds to that, you also go for refuge. You dispel pride or haughtiness that brings kind of the sense of, you can say, invincibility that we have in samsara. So all of these are positive qualities of suffering. And not only that, also, we spoke about those benefits of suffering in relation to how you put a stop to anger, how you arrest anger when you yourself are being harmed. So, right, so when you are being harmed, one of the ways of practicing patience that pays no heed to harm or to suffering that is caused to you is the thinking of the benefits of suffering. So a similar thing is done also in this stage when we are arrested by means of the patience that is paying no heed to those who cause harm in relation to those who wrong those do to oneself. So we meditate on the benefits of patience. So before we meditate on the benefits of suffering, here we meditate on the benefits of patience. So it's quite similar. So I just wanted to draw out this point because it seems that in both periods in which we spoke about patience that pays no heed to suffering that is being inflicted upon you, we meditate on the benefits of patience and the benefits of suffering, right? So we use this opportunity to remind ourselves why it is actually good to have that situation. It is good to experience stuff. We can then use that experience in order to enrich or to empower our practice. So,
Because one thing you didn't mention, which
and I apologize for that.
no, please. Is that I think is really highlighted with the practice of patience, that if you don't behave patiently, then you can propel yourself into lower realms.
And this is what this section is saying.
It really pushes that home.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of the reason that I haven't said that is that the second point in that section, accepting small suffering, will act to overcome the cause for the sufferings of the hell. That if you're not patient, then that will bring about more problems and suffering and miserable states of existence in the future.
And that's what I really liked about today's teaching, where it highlighted that, you know, we've all been in the hell realms numerous times, animal realms, but yet we still, you know, because we can't remember any of that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, because we can't remember any of it, we still behave badly.
Actually, I liked how it was put this morning as a hellish existence, because then it makes it's not like some separate entity in some other place. It's actually our whole existence can have that hellish aspect.
Yeah, our whole existence can have a hellish aspect. We don't practice patience. And also, you said that because we don't remember our previous lifetimes.
The suffering that we
and the suffering. Yeah, kind of sometimes I look at that in kind of two ways. Like sometimes I think that would have been so great if I could remember everything that I experienced in previous lifetimes, so that I would have a greater determination to emerge from samsara, kind of seeing the futility in samsara. But then if you imagine all the myriad terrible experiences that we all have already had in samsara, it would be like, I think that we'd have like the massive, probably the biggest post-traumatic syndrome. Yeah. Imagine kind of repeatedly kind of thinking of all the different ways in which you were harmed.
Memories coming up.
Yeah. It's quite good, actually. It's quite fortunate that we cannot remember all those horrible experiences.
We recognise that we've had them, and that they must have been bad. But going back there,
Yeah, particularly when you think of the way that Lama Tsongkhapa describes the hells, you know, so the way that he approaches it is it's in such a graphic description, as if kind of those places exist exactly like that as Lama Tsongkhapa describes it. So if you were to imagine it existing as Lama Tsongkhapa describes it, and actually having to go through all those different experiences, and also remembering all of that again and again and again, I don't think that it would be a pleasant experience. I think that probably it's better not to remember that than to remember that.
I guess by the same token, though, it is worth meditating on. Because it will help you to develop a sense of urgency to reprioritize your life.
Yeah, and as Lama Tsongkhapa says, the way that you meditate on that is not that you think that it exists out there. You think of how it would be like for me to experience that. So you imagine the situation when you're in those states of existence and how horrible it would be to experience all of that. Yeah. All right, I'll get back to that soon, Olaf, but what I wanted to do is to point out that reflecting on the benefits of this specific kind of patience is part of, in general, patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So we meditate it in relation to ourselves, but we also meditate it in relation to those who are dear to oneself. So the first point is making effort so that one's virtue does not deteriorate in verses 70 and 71. Let's just briefly look at them. For example, if a fire in one house has moved into another house, it is right to remove and get rid of straw and such things that the fire will spread to. Likewise, when my mind is attached to something and the fire of hatred spreads, I should immediately get rid of it for fear of my merit being burned. Kempo Kumpen in this book describes, I think, this scenario in a clear way. So remember that all this section, these verses come out of the section of how you practice patience when those who are close to your heart are being harmed. So if you imagine a situation where you have like a dear family member, for example, or someone that is a close friend, and they're being harmed by another person, and they respond to that with anger or with a sense of despair. So you see what's happening to them. And if it's something that happens to someone that is close to a heart, there's a greater chance that we'll become enraged. Right? So think about it. Think about how the way that we respond to a certain situation is affected by how much attachment do we have to that person. So if a person is being harmed in a particular way, and we don't necessarily know that person, and we don't know the aggressor, we will react in one way. Well, it is very likely that we'll find it distressing. But if someone that is close to our heart is harmed in the same way, I think that we'll become even more distressed. If it's a certain, and we can think of situations where you have a close family member, a close friend that is describing how a certain person has wronged them. They were unjustly wronged in a certain way. Because you like that person, because you have a certain affiliation with that person, you get angry as a support of that person, right? You also think that this is completely unjustified. And Kempo Kumben says that this is the description of, or this is the way that the analogy works here. When one fire jumps from one house to the next, right? So it jumps from that person. They have a problem, they have a situation with another person, and they respond to that with anger or with a sense of despair. Because of the attachment that you have to them, it jumps onto your house, right? The fire of anger jumps into you and you also become angry. So maybe I'll read through that. It says in page...
That's very similar to how Justin read it, when we were in the discussion.
Okay. So you're saying that it's similar to the way that Justin read it. Yeah, it's an excellent thing to pay attention to those details. I think that here, at least in this commentary, it is clear. So it says in page 215, how is to pacify resentment, or how is one to act so that anger and hatred do not arise? Shantideva takes the example of buildings that are on fire when the flames go leaping from one house to a house. The wise course is to take and fling away anything inflammable that might assist the speedy propagation of the fire, straw and other things that, though useful, are of less importance. Similarly, when our friends or close associates to whom we are attached are attacked, first the fire of hate springs up between the same friends and there are silence. Fearing that the conflagration of hatred might spread also to our minds, and the merit of a thought of 1,000 kalpas being consumed, it is said that we must at once cast away whatever we are attached to, friends, close associates, and so on. The meaning here, it is said, is that we must at once cast away attachment. So it's a really, I think, confronting way of describing that if you don't think of what the meaning is of casting away our attachment. Because it sounds like, in some sense, if you cast away your attachment to your close ones, then you stop caring about them. Or you become completely insensitized to whatever suffering and problems they experience, which is definitely not the way that we want to react, right? To stop having a sense of attachment to our close ones means to stop, first of all, on the basis of ignorance, superimposing excellent qualities, exaggerating excellent qualities that are not there in reality. So to stop that sense of attachment is to come to see people as they are, exactly with good qualities and negative qualities. So you can, for example, have a sense of sympathy to someone that you like, someone that is close to your heart, your friend, your family member, your partner, your parents, and so forth, and recognizing that just like you, they want to be happy and they want to avoid suffering. And also the aggressor, just like you, want to be happy and does not want to experience suffering. So you can approach that with a sense of equanimity. Rather than stopping caring about others, you can approach that with a sense of equanimity and recognizing how all of us are acting on that basis of seeking happiness and not wanting suffering, and being confused about the cause of happiness and being confused about the cause of suffering. So, as it says here, likewise, when my mind is attached to something and the fire of hatred spreads, I should immediately get rid of it for fear of merit being burned, which is, I think, that also what Dechen referred to. Kind of, that's one of the things that we need to remind ourselves when we get angry, that anger destroy roots of virtue, but also is creating this powerful non-virtue that will lead us again and again to miserable states of existence. All right, I see that there is an active discussion here. It says, so Olaf is saying, how does non-fallacious fact of evolution impact on the Buddhist cosmology outlook? What does it mean? I'm not sure that I understand your question. How does non-fallacious, do you say?
Non-fallacious, in other words.
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah. Fact of evolution impact on the Buddhist cosmology outlook, which means the 6 realms. I'm not sure that I understand
Well,
what you're getting.
Probably beings in this world is what he's saying.
Beings in this world.
Maybe.
Well, Olaf, let me think about it tonight, and if I have something smart to say, I'll say it tomorrow. If I don't have anything smart to say, I'm going to say that I don't have anything smart to say. All right. Kate is saying the difference between distress and general suffering and an anger at suffering, when we hold it close, excellent lesson is in attachment and anger. Okay. Shannon is saying it is encouraged that we focus on people's positive qualities, not on faults. So how do we integrate this with an equanimous view? I think that with an equanimous view,
well, it's focusing on the good qualities of those that you dislike, as well as those that you like.
It's focusing on the good qualities of those that you dislike, as well as those that you like. I think that when, with a sense of attachment, we get a completely distorted vision of the people that we're attached to, the things that we're attached to. We emphasize the good qualities, and it prevents us from seeing faults. Now, when I say that it prevents us from seeing faults, it doesn't mean to say that the faults that others have are inherent faults. They're faults of common afflictions. I think that probably the most probably striking example of that is what happens to us in relationship, right? So we fall in love, we think that the other person is perfect, our happiness in the other person, they have no problems whatsoever. That's what happens, at least that's what happened to me before when I used to get in love with another person, seeing only qualities, no faults. After some time in the relationship, problems arise. Then you see only faults, and it's hard to see good things. Well, not always, but sometimes this is what happens, right? This is kind of, it seems that sometimes some relationship can get to the point where the source of your misery is the other person that before was the source of your happiness, right? So becoming equanimous is also about saying that we have, not only that all of us wanting to be happy and no living being wants to suffer, but also that we're a mixture of good qualities and faults.
It's recognizing that there's faults, even if you only think you see positive qualities, you have to go, but there are faults there.
There are faults there, so long as we're in samsara, so long as we are controlled by ignorance, for that long there will be faults. I think that also, how do we integrate that within equanimous view? To integrate that within equanimous view would also be attempting as much as we can to balance out our partial approach, seeing others as close to us and caring for them only to those who are close to our heart, and not caring that much for those that are not that close to us, and having a complete sense of disregard to those that we dislike. Right. So think about, I think that all of us have at least one person that or most of us at least, have at least one person that we feel a bit uncomfortable with, or that we have a sense of dislike, or kind of something nacky happening in our heart or mind when we think about that person. So something bad happens to that person. Sometimes kind of we think it's quite bad, but sometimes we react to that with a sense of indifference. Anyway, we dislike that person, so we don't really care what happens to that person, right? So developing an equanimous attitude to others is also to balance out those attitude of anger, attachment, and ignorance, to try to see everyone is equal, in a sense that is an equal object of care. All right, so these were verses 70, 71. Then accepting small suffering will act to overcome the cause of suffering of the hells. Again, we have two verses here, 72 and 73. We've mentioned that already here, so let's just read quickly through that. Is it not excellent if a man condemned to death is released after having his hand cut off? Is it not excellent if I'm spared from hell by way of human suffering? If I cannot endure even just the suffering of the present, then why do I not refrain from getting angry because of suffering in the hell? So again, I think that this is what is the point that Dechen made at the beginning of this session. So we do get to very difficult situations in this life, don't we? Situations that sometimes seems that we cannot dig ourselves out of this a terrible situation. But here Shantideva says that comparing with miserable states of existence, it's actually quite light. I mean, it's easier said than done, or easier said than thought. I mean, when you find yourself in an absolute disaster in this life, when you lose someone that is close to your heart, now imagine how it'd be like to be diagnosed with a terminal disease. And kind of you feel that, and you know that there's nothing that you can do in order to overcome that. Or to be diagnosed with something that might not be a quick life-ending disease, but something that will probably take 20 years to bring you down, but it's still going to be painful and quite distressful. I guess that most of us will react with a mind of utter despair to that. Not all of us, but probably initially the onset will be quite shocking. So Shantideva says here that when you think of cultivating patience that pays no heed to suffering, then you can think that it's better to burn off negative karma in this life, in the experience of a terrible situation, than having to experience something that is way worse in future lifetimes. And even more so, if you do get distressed and angry, and you act based upon anger, then the situation would be far worse. You're actually creating more causes for miserable states in the future. So again, the interesting thing is that he mentions that stuff, those points with respect to, I think mainly with respect to oneself as a practice of mind training, but it's still under the section of arresting fury towards those who wrong those did to oneself. So it seems that I don't know why it is included in the section of arresting fury or arresting anger, when something bad happens to those who are close to oneself. I mean, it seems like it is a point that is more useful to work with when we think about our way of dealing with difficult situations. Or another way of saying that it can be applied equally to ourselves and equally to others. Any questions?
Geshe-la was talking today about small suffering, mainly physical suffering.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking, as this one trial was about mental suffering and mental illness, and whether that's classified as physical, like in the brain, or whether that's part of mental consciousness, and whether or not the propensity to have a mental illness actually goes through you from life to life.
So I'm just going to repeat the question for the sake of the people at home that might have not have heard it clearly. So Geshe-la mentioned today here with respect to these verses that it refers to physical suffering. But you were thinking about it, and you were thinking of also mental suffering, like, for example, mental illness. Since mental illness can sometimes be attributed to chemistry of the brain or the working of the brain, can you say that that also is taken to be physical suffering? And does it also work as being passed on from mental illness? Is it passed on from one lifetime to the next? Well, I can start with a second question in saying that I don't know. I would imagine not. In a sense that I think that there are, I'm not informed at all. I'm not a scholar at all about mental illness, but I think that many mental sicknesses, or some of them, have to do with chemistry of the brain, they have connection with the physical level. Since this body is only present in this life, I think that that situation is likely not to transfer to a future lifetime. Of course, you could say that maybe there is a karma that determines that the consciousness meets up again with the body that have a similar disposition. But it's all in the realm of maybe, because you don't find it described like that in scripture. And the whole conversation about mental illness is something that is becoming, I think, more and more informed and more developed, probably in this cultural setup, scientific setup, psychology, and so forth are psychology is relatively a new science. So when you look at Buddhism, Buddhism doesn't speak of psychology, although it teaches Buddhist psychology, but it doesn't call it Buddhist psychology. So I'm saying that also to connect it with the first point, with the first question. So when Geshe spoke of mainly physical suffering, I think that his way of relating to that, to suffering, is also conditioned by his background. So in Tibetan society, traditionally, there's no conversation about mental health. When there's no, I think this, using those terms, mental sickness, mental illness, different mental dispositions, depression, bipolar, what have you, those terms did not exist in Tibetan language. Maybe they are now being made up, but most people are not aware of them. So the term mental illness or mental sickness, or the whole topic, is not discussed widely in Tibetan society as it is here. It's not to say that they don't suffer from mental illness, they just have other ways of speaking about it. So I think that one point is that because the cultural context is different, they would likely to speak more of physical suffering rather than to speak about mental illness. Sorry?
That wrong, yes, which seems to encompass a whole lot of mental illness.
Yeah.
That it's an imbalance of wind energy. So again, it's talking about physical.
Yeah, so they speak about lung, which is a certain way of alluding to mental sickness or mental disposition. So that has to do with, of course, physical constituency, because also a disturbance in the lung which means wings, is also treated in, for example, Tibetan medical field.
It often means an imbalance with the element.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is what we're made of as physical. But I think something that I'm really liking that His Holiness is talking about is emotional hygiene. And that, like physical hygiene, where we do on a daily basis, we brush our teeth, and, all the things we do physically, do our hair, put our makeup, yada. We do so much on a daily basis for our own personal hygiene. But what do us Westerners do for our emotions on a daily basis? And see, I'd like to highlight that I think Tibetans, they do a lot for their emotional hygiene. They've got the grannies walking around with their wheels and walk up miles, doing running horns. They're always going to the temples and passing, offerings of daily practice. They are doing so much for their emotional hygiene. Well, our culture, we're take, but what can I get? We don't do much for our emotional well-being at all on a daily basis. So, I think as far as, I've lost my thing.
But I think that,
That's right.
but going back to the point that you made, I think that also you can certainly say that in terms of experiencing mental illness in this life, you can say you can also extend it to, I think, mental illness to all of us. All of us suffer from certain degrees of mental illness, in the sense that, first of all, ignorance is has a distortion view of reality, and anger, attachment, and so forth. All of them are mental conditions. So in that sense, you can say that all of us have certain degree of mental illness, although for most of us, we are undiagnosed, or we are considered to be kind of completely okay, although we still have the sickness of the afflictions. So then, but when you suffer from more kind of acute mental illness, which also brings about a sense of, I think, quite a lot of pain, and I think that it is often described by others even more painful than physical pain. I think that you can also use that in thinking that it's better to at least experience that in a human society where it is painful, but at least you have things that make it easier. You have people that support you. You have ways to try to mitigate that, than to experience suffering that are greater than that, invisible states of existence. And one point that Geshe-la mentioned today was that set up when we think of a human lifespan, then we will live at most to be maybe 100 years. And we might experience some suffering, physical suffering, or mental suffering, but it's quite, you can say, easy in comparison with others. And particularly when we think of how now we might experience some pain, some sickness, and we have doctors and nurses and painkillers and so forth to make the situation better. But if you've been to India, for example, you sometimes see dogs or monkeys that are walking around with open wounds, sometimes with amputated limbs, and the wound is completely bare, exposed. And there's no one to take care of them. So we do experience problems and suffering and pain, but we're better off in some sense in our society because of our social structure than other way of life or living.
But I would also like to think too that mental illness, like any illness, is a form of purification. We've created the cause for it, and that's why we are now experiencing it. And I think the more we take on that concept and try and do things to purify it by, taking responsibility, and, there's heaps of things we can do to help purify negativity that causes illnesses. And that you'll burn it out.
Well, I think that, to use illness as a purification wouldn't say practice, but a purifying situation would also be based upon your attitude. If your attitude is really shitty when you suffer and you become totally negative about it, and you also become quite abrasive with the people around you, I find it hard to think that that's a purification practice. Actually, it might be something that.
But with mental illness, that can be a symptom of it, that these negative thoughts can arise spontaneously. So in that situation, I don't think that's the case, because nobody wants to. A well person does not want to have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
It's a very painful place to be to have suicidal thoughts. So I don't see that that's when somebody is having suicidal thoughts, it indicates just how unwell they are. As soon as they've ever popped up in my mind, they have it, a couple of times. Holler, you are not well. Alarm, you are not well. And so you then, you might go and do something, go and see a doctor or help, whatever. So, I think, that's where like you said before, you need to seek help. And there is help out there for us.
It's just looking at the section on the chapter where it says about 404 affliction caused diseases, or caused by delusions. So, I guess we say that it manifests as something physical in the body.
So 404 afflictions that cause sickness in the body. Yeah.
And they're classified into 4 groups of 101 illnesses caused by different things. Doesn't specifically say what afflictions cause what diseases.
I attended a mental health session quite a while ago. I was 7 years ago at the Center. I attended it.
Yeah, the FMT mental health.
Yeah, and there were psychiatrists and psychologists and all sorts of people there, and we had a big mental health thing at work. So I went and it fed into what Norm was saying here, is that so she was a Melbourne University medical doctor and a Tibetan doctor, and she advised the Dalai medically as well, and she had I'll probably tell you to she had the chart where you fitted in your human personality fitted in, and psychosis fitted into one personality, and the other one didn't fit very well, but many of them was bipolar. Clinical anxiety fitted into one, and then there were things that you must eat if you fit into that, and one of mine was, I can remember, was corn, and I loved corn since a little child. It was amazing to do this little test and find out that I was in the right box, and so what I got from that is what you put into your human body. Yeah. And if you have mental issues, that balance, the alkalinity and all that balance that happens when you're putting in the right foods and the right type of meditation and things like that, also help with your mental disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really. I can't remember her name.
Because Shannon commenting she can't hear people on the phone.
Yeah.
So Michelle was saying that she attended a conference. It was organized by the FMT. Had a Western therapist and doctors, and also a Tibetan doctor, also giving an explanation about how Tibetans approach mental health, and also how the diet, for example, influences mental health. So dividing people into different categories, and according to their disposition, also what type of food also affect their disposition. Like, for example, if you're a person of that type, then eating corn will affect your situation this and that way. But the point is that there is kind of the whole basis of the presentation was how the mind is supported upon the body. So maintaining a certain lifestyle, a diet and so forth also affects our mental state or mental well-being.
Yes. Yes. I mean, Ayurvedic lifestyle really pushes that back.
Yeah. Then let's just look at the last point in that section that we've covered today, which is it is reasonable to enjoy hardships that accomplish greater purpose. Now, to enjoy hardships, which means that I think that it's similar to what we said before. Kind of, you think that you're experiencing problems and difficulties in, for example, the practicing patience. So you develop joy in that, rather than feeling completely disgusted by your practice or by that situation. So you find ways to generate joy in your practice. So it says, feeling regret for how many bodies we have wasted in the past and still not accomplished either our own or others' welfare. I think that Geshe explained it in a way that is quite clear. I think that also from what we've discussed before and having been around for so many lifetimes and not being able to accomplish not only yourself and not our own purpose, as well as the purpose of others. I think that one of the verses that I can't remember if we've covered that before or whether we're yet to cover it. Maybe it's from the Lama Chopa. Buddhas work for the sake of others. Foolish beings work for their own self. Look at the distinction of look at the distinction between them and see.
Yeah. I don't think it's from the church.
So many Buddhas have gone beyond and have gone by, and we're still here. So the differences between, we're still here. I think that it's coming up in the 8th chapter, teaching equalizing, exchanging self with others. But anyway, the point is that we've been around in samsara for such a long time, still here, still haven't been able to accomplish our own purpose, let alone the purpose of others. So it says, for the sake of my desires, I experienced thousands of years in hell. I enacted the purpose of neither others nor myself. Then the next point, but now since great purpose will be established from harm, which is not as much, I should solely be joyful towards such suffering that dispels harms of migrating beings. All right, so sucking a step up to take up difficulties, austerities, problems, even if it's hard to practice patience, we think that I'm accumulating virtue. I'm doing it not only for myself, but also for the sake of others. So if I experience problems, if those are close to my heart experience problems, I will still continue with my practice because through that I will accomplish the benefit of others, the greater purpose. So what I also wanted to do today was to look at one of the secondary offenses. We can look at that, or if you have any questions. All right. So we've been looking at the Bodhisattva vow. So for those who have taken the Bodhisattva vow, there are 18 root downfalls that we need to abstain from and 46 secondary offenses. So bit by bit, we've been covering those 18 root downfalls and 46 secondary offenses. So we are going to pick up today from, I think, the 34th or 35th secondary offense. So 35th. So remember that up until now, we've covered the secondary offenses, which are incompatible with the practice of the 6 perfections. So we've covered that. And we are left with, I think, 12 or 13 secondary offenses, which are incompatible with ethics of working for the sake of others. So number 35 reads, if out of anger or laziness, you do not help someone by performing any of the following 8 helpful actions, when it is appropriate to do so. It is a secondary offense of not acting to assist one in need. So before we read through that list of 8, I think that we can also take that in general to be a guiding, kind of a guiding principle. If there's something that you can do for the sake of others, but you don't do that because you're angry with that person or because you're lazy, it is that secondary offense. Or at least it is affiliated with that secondary offense, not acting to assist one in need. So I think that one of the points that we can emphasize here is that if you can do something for the person, which means that if you're not sick, if it's something that is important, if there's something, for example, that you're doing now that is really important and meritorious, and by stopping it and doing something else, helping someone else, something else, it might be forgoing something that is more important, then you have different situations which, I don't know, no, I don't think that they give you a way out, but kind of certain disclaimers in relation to that. So you also should look at the situation. Someone, if you're about to go into a 3-month retreat, and today's the starting date, right? So you've decided that today you're going into retreat, and someone asks you to drive them down to Brisbane. It's likely that it's more important to go into retreat rather than driving someone to Brisbane, if they can find someone else to do it, right? So looking at the purpose and also the prohibition, what is more beneficial, is also really important. So those 8 cases, 8 actions are resolving the best course of action to take, right? That's the first one, resolving the best course of action to take. Second is accompanying someone on a journey. I think that sometimes it's helpful to put it in a cultural and historical context. When someone asks you to accompany them on a journey, either for the sake of protection or because they need to do something that they couldn't achieve by themselves. If, for example, they are sick, if they're weak and so forth, and you need someone to help them out, and you can do that, but you choose not to do that because you're lazy, that would be a secondary offense if you have taken the vow. Teaching a language. I don't like this one, but anyway. Teaching them how to act flawlessly. Someone needs an advice. They might be asking you directly. Or even if they don't ask, even if they don't ask you directly, if there is a situation where they feel that there's something in general that you can help say in order to help them out and pointing out for them the right direction. Like, for example, suppose that in this community where we have a community of monastics, people take ordination, someone comes to you and says that, hey, I'm new. Point out problems and difficulties when you see them, because I will not know how to do it. Tell me if I'm doing something wrong. If you've been asked to do that, right? So you ask from the very outset to help someone else, and you think that, I couldn't be bothered. I'm too tired, or this is not my responsibility, or I don't want to get in trouble with that person, and so forth. That could work as a secondary offense.
No, that wasn't.
Okay. So, guarding the resources, reconciling disputes between individuals. I think that this is really important, right? Not shying away from trying to reconcile people, bring people together, not thinking that I don't want to, sometimes we think that I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get in, I don't want to get in trouble. This is too hard. I've done it too many times before. So that kind of lazy mind, which also I have.
No, I mean, I mean, at what stage reconcile disputes between individuals, like, just like politics? Not mentioning in particular, but we are all aware of different sorts of politics. And at what stage do you actually get involved, or do you allow things to play out, to a degree, and you practice patience with it? Because, often, with a dispute or something like that, you've got some viewpoint, some investment in it yourself, potentially, because you are part of the organisation, if the disharmony is disrupted to the workplace, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think you need a few more guidelines to say that when it becomes an infraction, than just to say reconcile disputes among individuals, like,
I think that those questions are big questions, but are way too general to answer them. Kind of to give you guidelines on when you do something, when you don't do something. I think that basically you have to look at the situation. If you can help, do it. If you cannot help, you cannot help. It's how can you answer something like that when it's so general?
It's very difficult situations, and there probably are a lot of situations where we can consult with someone senior to us, or removed from the situation, or whatever, who we trust, to be able to say, how best, if it's not an immediate conflict. But there are also situations. I remember a friend of mine, her brother jumped in, and somebody was attacking someone in the park, and so he got killed because he jumped in.
He got killed.
Yeah, just because he tried to intervene and disarm the person he got. So there are certain situations where
What you just said,
the wisdom
brings it back to just nothing, like
Exactly.
forgetting. I don't know if that sounded right. What I mean is, you don't have to go into all that understanding what the dispute is between two. You just go, can I help?
Yeah.
No. So I'm not making any infractions. If I can help, then you do have responsibilities. But it's not about your opinion or what you think or which person is right or wrong. If there's a dispute between two people, like say, you just look at that and go, can I actually help, or is it going to make it worse? I don't need to put my 2 bob worth in. So no, I can't help. You're not. Walk away. You don't have to look into it any deeper and know what it is about or the specifics of it, maybe.
Well, what about when you have bullies? No, I don't want your help. Mind your own business.
Again, if you can help, you do it. If not, I mean, it's hard to answer those questions in general because you have to be skillful with certain situations. You approach a certain situation, and often those situations are not alike. They're quite different. So, do you have the skills to get involved? Will they listen to you? Is there a greater purpose, or is there just little benefit? It's hard to answer those questions in general.
Or even specific times too.
Sorry?
Even specifically
Yes.
too. That's the point that I'm making.
Yeah, so that I think we just don't worry about the specific.
Treat them all in the same way.
So the last 2 things I mentioned here is assisting in ceremonies and celebrations and performing meritorious activities. So if you can help with assisting in ceremonies and celebrations, that's what puja.
coming up.
Labab
Saturday.
Dutim. When is Labab Dutim?
7.
7. Okay, weekends. All right, so if you can assist in ceremonies and celebrations, please do so. Dallas, I know that you're living very far away from here, but this is not an excuse. If you can help, just do it.
What's happening apart from shouting really people?
I don't know. We might have a extensive light offering. We haven't decided yet, and it's not that I'm the deciding factor. They haven't decided yet. This is what I should say. And the last one is performing meritorious activities. All right. So let's finish it here for now. Let's do some dedication verses. There you go. Due to this version might quickly become a Guru Buddha and did all transcendent grace of being without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva is not fit to rise, without the reason not decline, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful to rising and Gyatso. Please remain on in samsara. You are called to subdue a small way, serves as a particle bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and strengthening marginalized victors doctrine. Philosophy accomplishes magnificent praise, honoring the strangers, protecting of myself and others who disciple. Please live long. Thank you.
I saw him the other day.
I saw him driving